Welcome back, viewers. You are still tuned into Prime Live. It is a Tuesday, and Tuesdays are all about health and wellness. And this is a very, very special month. We are in Women's Month. So our conversations this month will be centered around women's health. And we do know that the women's healthcare sector is really something that needs a lot of attention and a lot of conversation, because just like we were talking about on air, women are struggling globally with so many different issues, and these are such important conversations. So to navigate women's health, we do have our resident wellness expert Ronald Abvajee, who is joining us in studio to be talking about menopause, how to navigate menopause through your nutrition, maybe even through supplements, and just being able to transition into menopause just a little bit easier. So do stay tuned for an insightful conversation, and don't forget to engage with us on all our social media platforms. Assalamu alaikum, Ronald. Thank you so much for joining us on Prime Live.
Wa alaikum salam. Good to be with you.
Now, we know that menopause can be a particularly challenging period in a woman's life. And just before we got onto air, we're also talking about premenopause, which, like you said, can last up to 10 years. We don't even know how long it can actually last. Can you describe menopause as well as premenopause?
All right, so when we look at menopause, menopause is clinically where women no longer have menstrual cycles or menstrual periods for a period of 12 months. It means that the ovaries are no longer producing eggs, which means there's no longer any menses happening. That is associated with symptoms that are vast and varied, but that is the clinical diagnosis that we then look at. When we look at perimenopause, actually, because premenopause is different to perimenopause, so perimenopause can actually happen 10 years before you go through menopause, and that's symptoms associated with irregular menstrual cycles and periods, fatigue, and it's also associated with weight gain, and of course hot flashes and a little bit of mood fluctuations as well, all because of the hormonal changes that are happening, and that can last anywhere from between 1 to 10 years in perimenopause. And if there's no other surgical need or induced menopause need because of a medical reason, then of course these are the two things that we look at.
Now, when we talk about menopause, it's all about managing those symptoms, because your body is going through so many different changes. And like with anything, with a good set of nutrition, exercise, and a good lifestyle, you can manage your symptoms as much as you possibly can. Now, when it comes to menopause, what are some of the foods that we should be avoiding during this time?
When we look at foods to avoid, we avoid things like high salt foods, we look at processed foods, high fat foods, high sugary foods, junk foods, the normal stuff, right? It doesn't change from those things. And the reason is as follows. When you look at menopause, what happens? It impacts the hormones that are produced when the egg or the ovum leaves the ovary. And that is ultimately your estrogen. Estrogen is the main hormone that gets impacted here. So when you look at estrogen, what happens is that it impacts your metabolism as well, which could lead to weight gain, brittle bones, or bone concerns downstream. It could lead into mood fluctuations, sleep fluctuations, etc. Heart conditions as well. So your nutrition is really focused on mitigating downstream risks with a change in estrogen, which is the main thing that we address.
And when it comes to eating, what sort of regime should we be following when we are starting to enter that menopausal area in our lives? You said to stick away from, the usual unhealthy, fatty, sugary foods. What are some of the key nutritional elements that should be incorporated into your diet to really assist your body with the drastic changes that it's now going to undergo?
So what you look at firstly is dairy. And why dairy? Because dairy contains your calcium, your vitamin D, your potassium, your phosphorus, etc. That's going to assist your body with, of course, bone health and protecting it from that perspective. But dairy also has a substance called tryptophan. And tryptophan assists you in falling asleep, because we also know that sleep patterns, hot flushes, also get impacted directly. And when your sleep is impacted, it affects a hormone called ghrelin, which means you tend to eat more when you actually don't need to, all because of sleep. That's one. The second thing that you look at is definitely your omega-3s. You've got to look at your essential fats and your essential oils. Generally, from a brain health perspective, maintaining neuromuscular health. You're looking at high-quality proteins, because your muscles are going to atrophy as you age. And with a change in estrogen, strength training and high quality protein go hand in hand. So fat off meats, etc., that's what you're aiming for. Your salmons, your mackerels, you're aiming for your high quality chicken as well, not fried. Aim for grilled, aim for boiled, or broiled. And then of course you're looking at your green leafy veggies, critical, because that's where you get your B vitamins and your thiamines, etc., which really does help you with your overall health. The key thing also is to mitigate salt, because you do become at risk of heart concerns and conditions, all because of one hormone called estrogen.
I mean, it's a crazy thing, and a lot of women are very scared to transition into that period of their lives just because, you hear about all the horror stories from other women who've experienced it. But this is something we spoke about at the beginning of the show, is that knowledge is so important, and we don't have enough access to this kind of information where we can actually learn to be able to mitigate a lot of the signs and symptoms that are bothering us so much with easy lifestyle changes as well as nutrition. And this is definitely something that should be incorporated into schools as well, is nutrition education. Education surrounding how to nurture and care for your body and how to take care of yourself. I mean, the only thing I remember ever learning about nutrition in school is the food pyramid. And there's so much of conversation about how the food pyramid is actually a complete myth. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that a bit later before we end off our conversation today. But with menopause, it can be such a drastic change in a woman's life. And she can go through so many different changes, and it can be really overwhelming at times. And I don't know if you've seen the market for the supplements for menopause. They are quite vast. There's a supplement for every kind of thing you can think of, and especially when it comes to menopause, there's so many different supplements out there. How do we navigate the supplement market? What should we be taking? Should we be taking any supplements at all? Help us out.
When it comes to pills, powders, and potions, I always look at the quality of it and how often and do I need it. So the only way you're going to know where you have a deficiency in certain supplement or nutrients or minerals in your body to know which supplements you should be taking is to go to your doctor and really get a full blood panel done. We know that the treatment for menopause focuses on a couple of things. There's the homeopathic, and of course you can get the allopathic, which is dealing with hormone replacement therapy or bioidentical hormones to really combat that. Oh, one more thing that I forgot to mention earlier, there's something called phytoestrogens. And it's a bit of a debacle around that currently, because phytoestrogens are foods that contain small amounts of estrogen, which has been shown to assist those dealing with menopausal symptoms from a nutrition perspective, soy beans and those kinds of things. But when you're looking at pills, powders, and potions, you're either going to have expensive urine if your body doesn't need it. So if that's what you want, by all means, go for it. But here's my suggestion. Endo warriors formed a community because the symptoms of endometriosis are vast and varied. The same thing with menopause. Do you know that the World Health Organization is anticipating 1.1 billion women going through menopause as you and I are sitting here speaking? And all those symptoms are unknown. The mental health, emotional health, social health, romantic relationships all get impacted. Estrogen also leads to vaginal dryness, which impacts fragile skin on the inside of the vaginal wall, which means being intimate with your partner is very difficult. So it impacts relationships. Divorce rates go up. So there's so many nuances that happen. But by coming together as a community to share from each other for each other, that is one of the biggest things you could do to support each other. Never mind pills, powders, and potions. Only if your doctor says so.
I really love that you've said that, because when it comes to menopause, it is something that socially we tend to kind of ignore. Much like a lot of other issues when it comes to women's health, we tend to kind of put it aside and we say, oh no, you're just moody, you're just this, you're just that. And you're being gaslit by your doctors, you're being gaslit by the community. But what is actually happening to you is drastic bodily changes that you are very overwhelmed by. And like you said, it can have a drastic effect not just on you, but on the people around you and your relationships, your family, as well as in your marriage. There can be so many changes that comes with it, and there definitely isn't enough emphasis or attention on it. And I think a platform like Endo Warriors for women who are undergoing menopause can be such an effective platform for women to be able to come together, yes, compare symptoms, but also not feel isolated in your symptoms. And that is from somebody who has a condition such as endometriosis. You can feel very isolated in your symptoms, and you can feel completely alone, and you can feel completely crazy when you're experiencing all these wild and crazy symptoms that you can't explain. However, if you have the support system to go to, or if you have a strong family support system, you can go to them and talk to them about it and feel heard and feel related. You can feel like you can relate to somebody and you can talk about what you're going through. Because like you said, the mental health challenges that can come with it can be drastically life-altering as well. So it is important that we create more awareness regarding, you know, the signs and symptoms, as well as to just create a much more kinder environment for women who are undergoing this huge change in our lives. And a lot of women are probably sitting at home and thinking as well, like we were saying just before we started the interview today, is that when do women ever get a break? They're always undergoing so many different changes and cycles in their lifetime, and I think it's time that the health faculty or faculties around the world start playing their part and, you know, doing better for women's health in general. But what I also want to ask, are there any natural things that we can look to for helping the signs, helping the symptoms, as well as just coping with overall wellness, such as the mood swings, targeting, you know, the weight gain? Are there any natural options that women can actually look forward to instead of going to the pills and potions route of things?
Absolutely. So when you look at the natural route, it really is identifying the symptoms you're dealing with and the degree of those symptoms. Hot flushes are not nice at all. So you need to be very wary of communicating to people around you, either in a work setting, a home setting. Aircon's going to be on, not on, windows are open, not open, duvet, no duvet, sheets, no sheets. And really create that support structure around you. When people understand, they're more likely to be supportive and not judge. Second thing that you look at, exercise, absolutely critical. You got to maintain your muscle integrity so you don't get muscle atrophy, and also then for your bone health, because your bones do get a little bit more brittle, especially as a woman, get older and a higher risk of osteoarthritis and osteoporosis. You then look at things like your nutrition, which is important, sleep hygiene, imperative, and the last thing that you would then definitely look at is stress mitigation. Because stress compounds cortisol in your body, and already your body is trying to adjust to the lack of estrogen and all the other metabolic processes around that. And when you can mitigate and manage the stress component, and I'm talking here about mental and emotional as well, you have conversations, you go seek a counselor, you find a community of women that can understand and have your back when you're down and will lift you up when you're higher, to give context. And maybe their partners are also involved in their own group. How do I support my wife as she goes through this journey, so that I'm not a hindrance, but rather an enabler for her to feel loved and cared for? Those are some of the natural things that you could do, but ultimately, the power is in your hands. We can share the knowledge, but if you choose not to act on it, then you deal with the consequences thereof.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And what a wonderful time in the year during Women's Month to highlight the key issues that women do experience and the different changes that women do experience in the different phases of their lives. And it's important that we create and highlight this topic, as well as the sense of awareness. Yes, for women out there, but for our men out there as well, so they can understand what their wives and what women are actually going through in the different phases of their lives. And creating that understanding and sympathy for somebody who's going through drastic life changes can impact and can make such a great positive impact. But as a country, as a world, we talk a lot about how women's health is in crisis and women's health is completely neglected, and how majority of the studies and statistics that we actually have are based on men when it comes to the different ailments and illnesses that one can have during a lifetime, and how research and investment into women's health is definitely not enough. What can we do better as a world and as a country to support women and to basically create a space where women's health is prioritized?
This goes down to, I think, as a world, the world has to start to listen to the World Health Organization. That's it. When you come closer home into South Africa, we need to break down the cultural baggage that we've brought into our lives. That's legacy. You don't talk about this, you don't do this, you stay here, you don't talk about anything that you're dealing with, etc. But the reality is that when we change and we break cultural legacy to become more embracing of overall health and awareness, the conversations we start to have with our young girls and the young teens, their bodies are going through changes. They're now getting breasts, there's now bleeding involved, there's now, there's pads, there's discussions to have that is natural discussions to have, and not to feel ashamed or shy thereof, and that you have to deal with it on your own, and rather become aware of your body and embrace what that is. The medical fraternity needs to step up. We know that they focus on cervical cancer, they focus on breast cancer a lot, we focus on a few of the major issues when it comes to women. But overall, we know that mental health and emotional health and other ailments that impact women need a ferocious degree of attention. And I'll say it again, endometriosis is one. I go to war with doctors that relegate that as an option when young girls come in with painful menstrual periods and so forth, and give them over-the-counter meds. They're going to have a fight with me because you're not giving the right information, and I believe at that point you're being lazy. So we need to hold our medical fraternity to account, our pharmaceutical industry to ethics and values, to not give us pills, powders and potions only, but to give us information to make informed choices. And it starts with us in our generations, for those who are parents, to start with the younger ones.
I couldn't agree more. Health is absolutely wealth, and it is the best form of wealth. And giving the public, giving women the power to take control over their health will empower women to a drastic degree. And as someone who has endometriosis and has been through the struggle of diagnosis, and I cannot tell you how many times I've been told I have appendicitis when I go in for stomach pain to the hospital. And there are so many women who are being gaslit for their symptoms, whether it's endometriosis, whether it's PCOS, whether it's menopause. We are being gaslit by doctors constantly and being told we're lazy, we just need to lose weight, or you're very dramatic, or you're over-exaggerating your symptoms. And women, the best way to empower women and support women is to invest in the healthcare sector and to not gaslight them and to listen to them. And you know your body better than anyone else. So exactly, you know what's wrong with you. I think, like you said, it's important to stand your ground and push the doctors and push the agenda that they do have going, and make sure that your voice is heard and your voice actually matters. When it comes to nutrition, I have to go there. We talk about, how important it is that people are educated and have access to knowledge and information when it comes to nutrition and well-being, so that they can better care for themselves from an early onset stage. And so we can start a nutrition and wellness journey with our children from the time that they're younger. But all we learn about in school is the notorious food pyramid. Let us debunk the food pyramid. Yes or no? Is it a myth? Is it a fact? Is it absolute nonsense? Are we learning anything of value in school?
Did you learn that in school?
Yes.
How many years ago was that?
That was a long time.
Many moons ago.
That was a long time ago.
Science and technology has changed. Now, the reality is that the food pyramid is fantastic from a principle perspective, but it's on dated research. But the principles of a lot of fresh green leafy veggies, fruits, less carbs, high quality proteins, that is still relevant. Now they look at your plate, right, and they give you the portions of the plate, etc. It's not about how much of it, just decrease your plate size. But here's where it becomes magical. I believe the opportunity now exists for educators, parents in particular, and educators to shift into creating user-generated content modules where children learn from each other, where you get them to adopt how fun and easy it can be to eat healthy when you're eating healthy, but ultimately the responsibility as parents and as caregivers, when you're tired and you're leaving work at 8 o'clock at night, are you going to go home and cook? Or are you going to, the kids are there, just get them a burger, let me just get them something takeaway. So the preparation around our lifestyles is also important, because we can educate till we're blue in the face. If there's no golden thread into where they're actually getting their foods, that's on us. And we need to accept that accountability. So it starts as a dual effect exercise, because children will help guide what you shop for when you give them the right information and make it fun. And then obviously you want to also give them a balance with how do we implement this in a space and a place that is home, where there might not be a lot of money to eat healthy, but you can still eat healthy here.
I think that's such an important concept, is that starting the healthy eating and healthy living and starting this healthy lifestyle from a very young age. And like you said, parents absolutely have that power to control what their children consume. And I'm seeing also on social media a lot of the mom influencers who are actually talking about this. I'm giving my child grapes instead of an ice lolly or an ice cream, because he doesn't know any better. If it's snack time and I'm giving him something healthy, that's what he knows is snack time. So if you're teaching them happy and healthy habits and they see you eating the happy and healthy ingredients and the healthy snacks, they're more likely to adopt that as well. And the health benefit that is then going to come from that will only carry over to the rest of their lives as well. But Ronald, before we let you go, menopause is such an important conversation and such an incredibly important topic that affects millions of women around the world. And like you said, there are so many women right now, as we are sitting right now, who are undergoing menopause, premenopause as well, who are undergoing drastic signs and symptoms. What is your message to them this evening?
You're not alone, and I know it's cliche to say, but as you talk more about it to your friends and others who you trust, you begin to share similarities and commonalities. When you begin to share, you remove barriers and boundaries, judgments, diminishing on those symptoms, feeling that you're alone. Because remember, there's 1.1 billion women currently going through menopause. And the more we can come together to have these conversations, we can learn from each other. The principle of Gestalt. We share through experience, and we can take what is relevant to us and implement and then share back. That's Ubuntu, giving forward all the time for each other.
Absolutely. I mean, gone are the days where there are topics of conversation that are taboo and that we can't talk about. We're not living in that world and in that generation anymore. One last question as well. I know there are a lot of misinformation around the idea of taking all these different kind of estrogen supplements to supplement the estrogen that you no longer have. Are they effective? Are they worth your time? Are they harmful? Please break it down for us.
You know, I spoke earlier about phytoestrogens, and there's a lot of research still going into it, and some are against, some are for it, where there are micro doses of estrogen in these natural occurring foods. But when you're looking at pills, powders, and potions that contain estrogen, my thing is that's a hormone. I want to go and get a bio-identical hormone that's relevant to my body, and that's where it goes into a clinical lab with your gynecologist and, of course, with your practitioners. I'd steer away from pills, powders, and potions because often you fall for a marketing message and you forget to read the label and see what else is in there.
Thank you so much for sharing with us this evening, Ronald. I think what you've highlighted now is incredibly important, and it's very difficult for a consumer to be able to go into your local Dis-Chem and Clicks and be able to navigate the good stuff from the bad stuff, especially when it comes to the pills and potions, as you've so accurately put it. There's so many good marketing strategies out there, and with the influencer generation, it's very easy to get whipped into an idea that there's this miracle product that's just going to take away your signs and symptoms. But at the end of the day, nothing beats a healthy lifestyle and good nutrition. But Ronald, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and thank you for bringing these conversations to light, these much needed, very, very often ignored conversations to the forefront.
An absolute pleasure. And thank you for the questions and insight as well.
Viewers at home, that is our resident wellness expert, Ronald Abvajee. It is Women's Month. We talked about all things menopause. And if you have any questions or comments for us when it comes to menopause, if you're currently going through menopause and you have any comments or questions for us, please do reach out on our social media platforms. And this is definitely a call to action from Ronald to all of you. If you are a lady who is currently going through menopause or you're just starting out, please do go ahead and start a community support group. Something like Endo Warrior South Africa plays such an important role in so many women's lives, including my own. It can make you feel so much better about your current situation, and you have support of your sisters behind you. It's absolutely important that, like we said, we can come together on issues like this, and it's time to stop gaslighting women about their symptoms. But on that note, viewers, it is time for us to take an ad break, and we'll come right back.